So, I've got my grenade. Okay, you got 30 seconds.
If we could start off, Bill, Qualmpeddler. If you could just tell us the thinking behind what is a Qualmpeddler and what was the thinking behind the title here for this tour?
Okay, well, the word is a word that I've invented, all right? So it doesn't exist. So that's the first tick for me, is to come up with something that's a new word, something that is it's a composite word. It's Qualmpeddler. So the two words haven't been put together before. So I kind of like that. I like the fact it's an original word. And I like the word qualms. So my grandmother, she used to use qualms about a lot of things. You know, qualms are worries, concerns, anxieties. And she'd say, I had qualms about, you know, these scones turning out right. Or she'd equally have qualms about nuclear war. So it's quite a broad spectrum of worry that is incorporated by the word qualms. And it's kind of an old-fashioned word as well, because I like sort of like old words. It's quite a slightly quirky word, you know. And peddler is, you know, someone who sells things, takes them around the countryside, you know, and again, quite an old word. It's sort of goes back to sort of medieval times, you know, people would turn up and sell things around the countryside. So I guess the combination of the two appealed to me because it's sort of like a bit like what stand-up comics do, really, and that is we go around the country sort of selling these ideas, these worries, you know, reflecting society's worries, the things that people think about on a day-to-day basis. And the other thing which I really liked the idea of was that, that when I researched the word peddlers, yes, they were basically hawkers. You know, they would go around and say, yeah, there's some old spoons and pots and pans, but they would also sing songs as well. So it's kind of appropriate. So I think Qualmpeddler is like an old word, like a euphemism for what stand-up comedy is. Oh, and that's my flight is now boarding, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave.
Sorry about that, Bill.
Sorry.
We will continue to endeavour anyway.
So there we go. That's it. Yeah. So Qualmpeddler is like a euphemism for stand-up comedian.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And with this particular tour, how did you go about coming up with the material? And coming up with any tour, coming up with the material, is that the hard part or the fun part?
Well, it's both really. I mean, it's hard because yes, I mean, you know, I've written quite a few shows, and you know, there's a bit of expectation. You want the show to be as good or better than the last one. You know, you want to maybe talk about other subjects perhaps you haven't talked about before in detail. And certainly the musical sections also have to be new and have to be different from the other shows. So it always becomes increasingly harder to find those original ideas and thoughts. And sometimes I'll have had them in my head for a long time. You know, like, you know, I had this idea when I was watching Downton Abbey. I was thinking, what would be a really good what would be a good musical style, a genre that would apply to the Downton Abbey theme? And I thought, of course, reggae, of course, dub reggae. So, because I listened to a lot of that after the show. So I thought, all right, see if I can get that to work. So I had that idea going on for a long time, and that was a process of trying to find the right beats, trying to find the right dub, you know, some work in the studio to get the sound to match up, to get the rhythm to match up. All of that's quite technical, but the idea was there for a long time. And sometimes you have ideas that just occur to you. Sometimes they just happen, you know, in the middle of rehearsing. Like I'm here writing in the office. I've got the piano, and I was just noodling around the piano, and I thought, oh, wait a minute, I used to remember this bass line I used to play, which is called the Alberti bass. And I thought, yeah, I wonder if you could apply that to some other themes. And so suddenly then I've got I'm playing the EastEnders theme with it, or the Match of the Day theme with it, and those sort of things happen quite spontaneously. So the music can be either of those two, but the writing is very much a disciplined thing. You sit down every day and just, you know, kind of sweat it out.
I mean, because especially with the music aspect of it as well, Bill, it's easy now to see why people are making a lot of rock and roll references to stand-up comedians now. Do you see it
Yeah.
that way yourself?
I think so, yeah, because I mean, comedians now play in the same venues that rock bands play, and they play in larger venues, arenas, and also I think there's quite a lot of crossover between the audience. I think a lot of people that go and see bands also go and see comedy, and I think there's certainly there's a lot of crossover with that. And I've played at many music and rock festivals over the years, and comedy's always been a part of that, and it's now an accepted part of the festival experience. You go and see a band, and then there's some comedians on, and another 10, and where that finally came to a sort of, almost for me anyway, like the kind of the high point was when I played at Sonosphere, in 2011, and that's a metal festival. I mean, that's not even just a, like one of these nice, kind of family-friendly festivals where there's like a, there's a yogurt tent, and there's a, a braiding tent, and a weaving tent, and a holistic pottery tent. This is just Slipknot fans with masks and scary tattoos. And so I thought, if this goes wrong, I'm just going to be flung about like a rag doll in the mosh pit. So this better be right. But that was a point where I thought, this is where comedy actually, for me anyway, this is like being accepted as almost an equivalent of seeing a rock band, because there's a lot of music in my shows anyway. I mean, I did predominantly do a lot of music in that set, but it was a comedy set, and it sort of could take its place alongside music.
And of course, with the DVD now out as well, how involved are you, like in regards to special features? Are we going to see many special features with a DVD? And what are we going to see, and how involved are you in that part?
Well, this particular DVD, there's actually a special film I've made specifically for this DVD, a featurette, if you like. And it's a bit longer, a bit more involved than usual, just like sometimes, you just get some outtakes or some extra material. But this is connecting to a specific bit of material that happened, that I talk about in the show, a story where I released an owl in China. And it's part of the show, it's an integral part of the show. It's when we were traveling in rural China, we came across a restaurant that had a live owl on the menu. So we bought it, released it in the woods, and I talk about this in the show. Now, the thing is, there was obviously, in the context of a comedy show, you can't go into huge amounts of detail because it's meant to be funny. So I do extrapolate the funny bits of it. But I wanted people to know a little bit more about it, because only this is as a result of questions I've had at shows. After the show, people ask me, was it real? Did it happen? What was it like? What were the circumstances? So I thought, to answer all those questions, I'll make a bit more of a detailed featurette. And so there's in the DVD, there's this film where I go to a bird of prey sanctuary and I talk to the director, ask her about the bird. Did I do the right thing, basically?
Sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, do you still find now that you're enjoying going on tour as much as you always have?
Yeah. I mean, touring is an essential part of what I do and what all comics do. If you're doing stand-up, eventually you'll have to do a tour. You'll want to do a tour. It'll be part of the whole process. And I think really it's how you go about it. I mean, over the years, I've gone from literally just me in a transit, turning up at a theatre with me Marshall amp and my guitar, and sort of saying hello, knocking on the door, hello, I'm here to do the show, and packing all the stuff away myself and driving home, to the other end of the spectrum, the extreme end, other end, was when a few years ago when I had, trucks, 9 Arctics full of gear. I mean, that just seemed bizarre to me. Like, how has it gone from this to this arena style comedy? So now I've sort of, almost like I've gone through that kind of the madness, and now I've scaled it back down again to a more manageable size, which is a small crew, but they're all guys I know really well, and we try and make it into a good experience. I try and get out a lot. I don't like to be in a hotel too much. You go a bit stir crazy. You need to plan a lot more. You need to plan where you're going to be and what you can do when you get there. I always have to go outside, take the binoculars, look for birds, go on walks, do things, see, absorb local culture. Otherwise, you can go a bit mad.
Bill, that's all we got time for right now.
All
so I'll leave it at that.
You're most welcome.
I'll go and grab